Hey guys, my name is Jessica Cowley and this is my genogram. So on the left side over here is my dad's side of the family, which is the Cowleys. You can see that I am this yellow box right over here. And then above me on the right is my mom's side of the family, which is the Anderton side. So to answer the first question, what significant trends did you see across your genogram? So, as I was looking over this, I noticed that a lot of the girls in my family from both generations actually got married at a young age. Most of them were in their early 20s, and it's interesting because the guys were in their late 20s. So, like, all of my sisters got married before they were 22, but their husbands were a lot older. And it shows that my great grandma, Christine Goldet Moffat Kelly up here, she was actually 17 when she got married, and her husband, I believe, was 20, so he was an exception. But most of my great grandparents were about 27 or 28 when they got married. Another trend that I noticed as I was looking over this is that there was one divorce in each generation on both sides of my family. So my sister got married married at the age of 19 and then divorced at 20. And then my grandpa on my dad's side was divorced. And then even though his parents weren't divorced, I know that some of his siblings were divorced. And then on my mom's side of the family, some of her siblings are divorced. And it's kind of the same situation, even though her parents were divorced. I know that some of her parents' siblings were divorced, and her great-grandparents, you can see, I guess my great-grandparents were divorced as well. Alright, so what surprised me about this genogram? So I was surprised about how much I didn't know about my ancestors. Like, I'm really used to seeing, like, birth dates and death dates, things like that, ages when they got married. But I didn't actually know, like, their personal dynamics, like if they got along with their siblings, or if they had miscarriages, physical abuse, mental, physical health, things like that. So I learned a lot about that, and I actually learned that a couple of my relatives, like Norma Delilah Anderton, as well as my grandpa's first wife, actually died giving childbirth. And that just was really sad to me. I can't imagine going through something like that, and I never knew that about them. I was also surprised about how much physical and emotional abuse existed in my family. You can kind of see that it starts up there with my great-grandparents and flows down to my grandparents on both sides, actually. You do see a lot of, like, good relationships in there as well, but a lot of abuse existed that I never knew about. So just kind of going along with that, what family dynamic or interpersonal issues did you see? So, I have talked a lot about abuse, but that was kind of something that was prevalent. So my dad, I guess my grandpa on my dad's side, he was born with club feet and a handicapped hand. And so he was emotionally abused by his father because he was kind of seen as a disappointment. And he was basically the only sibling that got abused there. But him and his siblings got along fairly well. And then you can see that it kind of trickles down into my dad's family. So you can kind of see that they were emotionally abused by my grandma and grandpa. So she emotionally abused a lot of them. I think she just kind of had a hard childhood as well, and my dad's siblings actually kind of emotionally abused each other. So it's kind of hard to see, but my Aunt Linda in the middle, she had epilepsy. And so that was really hard for my dad and his siblings to handle, so they weren't always the best to her growing up. But my dad said despite most of the siblings kind of abusing each other growing up, they all have fairly close relationships now, and their dynamics are way different. And then on my mom's side, you can see that they were emotionally abused a lot by their dad. Almost every sibling, well, every sibling was abused by my grandpa, and he even emotionally abused his own wife, which made them have a pretty strained relationship. And that carried kind of down to have some conflict in between each other. You can see that some of the siblings were close, but some of them had jealousy and like one of them was estranged. Like my mom and her brother don't even talk anymore, and so there was a lot of like drugs involved and alcohol and things like that. So it was just not a very good family dynamic. So I guess the bright side of this is even though both my parents were emotionally abused by their parents, well, I guess my grandpas, they did not carry that into their future their current family, I guess. So as you can see, all of my siblings and I are really close, and them and their spouses are really close as well. They're all best friends. I get along with my siblings really well. We're all really close. My parents are awesome, and I had no idea, honestly, that they were even like abused growing up. I would have never guessed because I saw a different side of my grandparents, and they were really great as I got older. And my parents made a promise that they would never let that affect their current family, and they haven't, and that has been awesome, and I'm super proud of them. And then you can kind of see over here that my sister, when she got divorced, she remarried someone that had 2 kids, and there's kind of some conflict with their she's their stepmom, so sometimes it's hard for them to get along, which is hard for her, but I think the relationship is slowly getting better. And then what evidence of intergenerational transmission did you see? So I feel like I've kind of covered that a little bit with just the emotional abuse kind of running in our family. But one thing I noticed was that depression has been carried down from the generations on my dad's side of the family. It started out with my dad's father, which is right over here. He had depression, and then that trickled down into my Uncle Lee and my dad. They both have depression, and that's kind of affected our own family because me and my sisters all have like anxiety and depression. And then over here, my mom, all of her siblings, and her parents actually had arthritis, and you can see that that's that little pink circle. So they all had arthritis, and so I'm not looking forward to that. Hopefully that one is not passed down to me. So what did I learn from this assignment? I learned that it's important to learn your ancestors' stories because it can help you discover your own. You can find out why you're born with certain physical or emotional challenges, as well as being aware of certain traits that you might receive in the future. I also learned that even though something such as emotional abuse has been passed down for generations, it doesn't mean that you have to let it affect your own family. You have the ability to create new stories and learn from the history of your ancestors. I also learned that there's a lot of different relationships that can exist in a family, and just because one relationship exists at one period of time doesn't mean that that has to be the relationship that you carry for your whole life. Like my parents and their siblings maybe didn't get along growing up, but now they're really close with each other. And it's just really awesome to see what runs in your family, and you can see what you're made up of and why you are who you are.